Hello, friends. I made it back from Philly. Shout out From Within Records, Marty Williams, Bob Wilson. I had such an amazing time for my first time going to a show in Philly. It's been a long time coming, but it was something that I'll never forget. I am humbled at how nice everyone was to me out there. I got to see a lot of friends. Shout out my friends in Broken Vow, Pummel, all the local homies that showed up. Shout out to all my Wilkes-Barre friends that were there. Streets of Hate in the building. It was such an amazing time. And for everyone who was able to make it out to the showcase, I just want to thank all of you for coming out and making it a really fun time. Thank you to everybody who picked up a Beskar collab tee. I was really, really happy with those. And I know everyone that I talked to that picked one up was super stoked on the design. So thank you for the support. Thank you, Chris Wilson, for designing this shirt. Thank you to Beskar for being down to collab on something very cool. But I just had an amazing time in Philly, going to the church for the first time and getting to experience it, which was a little surreal, right? You watch so many videos from a legendary venue, and once you step inside, you're like, holy shit, this is wild. Because I normally look at this place through my computer screen, through my cell phone, but to be there in person, it was an amazing time. So thank you, Philly, for having an awesome scene. Shout out to all the bands that rolled out from out of state. Shout out to Burning Strong, Statement of Pride, Magnitude. Who else came in from out of state? There's a lot of people there, but I was just so happy to see so many friends that I normally don't get to see, because you got to realize I'm from California. I flew out to Philly, and I was just so happy to be around a bunch of people that I admire and respect, and am thankful and happy to be able to call friends. Got to go to Boyertown. Shout out to that new Gridiron record. It was cool, because to be honest, I never thought I would get there so soon. Just having Andrew from Payback on the podcast and him repping Boyertown super hard, and having on Matt Carl, and to finally get there and get a quick tour of the town. I got a photo in front of the Boyertown sign. You can go check that out on my Instagram. It was cool. I'm very pleased and very happy with all the things that I got to do, and I will be back very soon. But I can't say too much. Just know that I'll be back soon. More on that at a later date. But on today's episode, we had to track down our good friend Alex. Plays in a band called Witness Chamber, and I first found out about Witness Chamber through my good friend Devin. He plays in Rejection Pact, and he puts on for his scene. He has no ego. He's always telling me about the new bands in his area and what I should be listening to. So I thank Devin for putting me on to Witness Chamber. I was super jazzed on that band when I listened to their record, and I listened to it, super into it. I let Devin know right away. I was like, hey, thank you for the recommendation. I really enjoy this band, and I reached out to everyone that I knew who was going to Jag 3 and try to put them on notice. For the people that weren't familiar, and not to my surprise, but people that I hit up, some people were already familiar, and I was just kind of late to the party. But I appreciate that band. They're super sick, and it was fun for me to be able to sit down and talk to Alex about the band and all things going on in Boise, because it's one of those scenes that I think deserve a lot more respect, especially when you look at the rest of the bands from the area and what they're currently doing, going on full US tours and putting out awesome records. And there's some new shit on the way from that area. And it's just really cool to see people who truly care about hardcore and put in a lot of work to keep their scene alive. So I respect that whole scene out there in Boise, Idaho. And for anyone who's not tapped in or tuned in, you should definitely pay more attention, because they're doing great things. So please strap in, enjoy this conversation. Without further ado, welcome Alex to the show. All right, and we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Alex. How's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing great. I'm happy to finally have you on the podcast. I've been a fan of your band for a little bit. I actually found out about Witness Chamber through my friend Devin. I'm sure you know who Devin is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's always putting on for your guys' area, which I definitely respect, and I'm always tapping him for who I should be listening to from your area. And we were just talking on some normal shit one day, and he had just brought up, "Hey, have you ever heard of Witness Chamber?" And I was like, "No, I'm not familiar." And he suggested that I would like it, so I checked you guys out. And this was like right before uh, Jag 3, and I was like, "All right, cool. Like, let me check this out." And I remember listening to it. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." And I hit him back after I like listened to the album, and I was like, "This is definitely right up my alley," and I'm super into this. And at that point, I started telling everybody that I knew who was going to Jag. I was like, "Hey, like, are you familiar with Witness Chamber? This is like, like a band that you need to check out while you're up there, because I really dig the music." So I'm really stoked that I just happened to talk to Devin that day, and he had put me onto Witness Chamber.
Damn. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, Devin's a homie. Devin, it's funny. I've known Devin for a long time, but only like the last couple of years, like 3 or 4 years, have we really started to like be friends and chummy. And Devin's the perfect example of somebody who's been in hardcore for a really long time, but didn't get like really jaded and annoying, and also like stuck around and puts on for everyone around here, even if it's like a type of hardcore, or like even like a type of band that it's not really his cup of tea. Like he rides for I play in like a death metal hardcore band called Grave Titan, and like he rides for that band. And he's told me multiple times, he's like, "Yo, this is not really music I'm really into, but you guys are doing it right, and it's sick." So Devin's a homie. I appreciate all the kind words. Yeah, Devin's a man.
100%. And I'm just curious about you. Did you grow up in the Boise area?
Yeah. So I was born in Boise. I've lived here like most of my life. When I was 7, I think it was, I moved to a really small town in Wisconsin called Johnson Creek for like 3 years. My dad got like a job there, and then we were there for like 3 years, and then moved back. And I've been in Boise ever since. So I'm pretty much Boise born and raised.
Okay, that's awesome. And did you find out about hardcore while you were in Boise or when you were in Wisconsin?
So it's funny. So it was definitely in Boise. So I was like, I always grew up on like not cool music, but like I both my parents were like glam metal and like old like 80s rock and metal heads.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just like professionally got into like heavier and heavier music. And then in high school, I was playing with Hunter, who plays guitar in Witness Chamber. We were playing in like a mallcore, like a Day to Remember worship band. And we met Jason, who plays drums. And he's actually from Wisconsin. He lived like less than 30 minutes away from me when I was in Wisconsin. We'd never met though. And he showed me hardcore. And it like, at first I was like, this is cool. I think I like my like dumb little metal songs better. And then like, I just kind of dug more and more into it. And like, he showed me more bands. And eventually I was like, there's something here that's like gripping me in a way that not anything else is. And eventually it was like, all right, now I'm in for life.
That's awesome. That's awesome to be able to have a friend who kind of, showed you the music, and you kind of just, figure out that this is what you're really into and just dive right into it and stick around.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we talk about this every once in a while. I think he hates it when we say it, but I think if Jason doesn't move to Boise, like none of us get into hardcore. Because I don't know if any one of us would have like found it like on our own. Like, I don't know, maybe in another timeline, but Jason like showed us all, like we were all into like deathcore and like just garbage. And then, he was like, "Yo, have you guys ever heard of like Trapped Under Ice?" And we're like, "No, what is that?" And we listen, and it's sick, and like Terror and stuff. And yeah, I think he is like the catalyst of like where Boise hardcore is now. Like the core people in Boise hardcore, I don't think find this type of music if he doesn't move here. So it's pretty crazy how that happens.
Yeah, that is really strange. I wish there was a way we could kind of explore that other timeline to see you go full deathcore and just not even acknowledge hardcore, because sometimes those types of shows will have a band that my friends and I will be curious about or want to see, so we'll roll out, and it's such an interesting experience because it's not that far away from hardcore, right? With like just the type of people that draws in, and we're familiar with the more metal type stuff, and it's always crazy when I'm there and these kids, like, that's all they know is this deathcore type stuff, and they're just 0% interested in hardcore, or they don't even know what hardcore is. And I was like, wow, like it's weird that like we can step outside of the hardcore bubble and go to like a deathcore show, but like when we're at those types of shows, it's just not a thing for them to do the same, right? To step out of their deathcore bubble, like that's all they care about. And it is really weird to me. And I just like the majority of that music to me, I think is pretty bad. I could not imagine that being my main type of music that I listen to. So yeah, it's crazy, and also kind of funny that it has like such a crazy following, because like we roll out and we're like, damn, this place is packed out for these types of bands. Like this is just seems like a weird like place to be.
Yeah, I think that membrane that separates like the one side, it's almost kind of like a two-way mirror, where it's like hardcore kids like getting into other stuff, that barrier of entry is super low. Like that's like almost like a thing to be in a hardcore and then be into like, death metal, or like be like a Smiths or an Oasis head, or like I'm really like the Cranberries. Like jumping into those other genres is very, very accessible. Whereas like for some reason, like metal heads, they like to cling to like that one thing, and that's fine. You can like whatever you want. But I also think that membrane that like separates metal from hardcore has, at least in the last like 5 or 10 years, I think it's thinned out a lot. And I mean, even just thinking about like when before I found hardcore, I was going to like the Rockstar Mayhem Festival like every year. Like I was just I was a butt metal guy. And it's like, it's crazy because like I was already into hardcore when Code Orange played Mayhem Fest, but it's like, damn, that's putting hardcore like right in your face. Like that's no accident. So I think as time has gone on, that has become slightly more accessible, where it's like, yeah, when I was in deathcore, it's like, how did I never find out about hardcore? This is like, they're an arm's distance from each other. And I think now, at least like what I'm seeing, or at least in Boise, that exposure is more apparent, and it's kind of sick because more kids get into hardcore that way.
Yeah. I have a really good friend who's like super into like obscure metal, and like is just like really proud of like the music that he listens to, and he listens to like other types of stuff too. He's like really into Prince and a bunch of other stuff, but I'm hanging out with him and his brother, and I'm finding out that they're listening to bands like Winds of Plague, Despised Icon, newer bands like Vane, and I'm just like, you guys don't understand like how much you would probably like hardcore if you gave it a chance, because like they do have this weird like I feel like skewed vision and idea of what hardcore is, and they're just like, in my opinion, afraid to dip their toes in. But I'm just like, dude, you guys are basically already there if you're listening to bands like Vane, who's top 3 biggest hardcore band today. So it's just always a little strange to me that like that crossover doesn't come like from like that side to the hardcore scene.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. But I like what you said about like Bane. Like bands right now, it's more accessible. Like when I got into hardcore, like I'm sure there were some out there that I just like either never found or weren't super big into. But like if I was like into music like Vane and didn't find Vane when it was like what, 2013? I don't know. Whenever I was like a freshman in high school is when I found hardcore. Like I don't think that crossover was as available, and even then it was still there, like listening to some of the stuff I did, like Winds of Plague, like there's parts in like Winds of Plague songs where it's like, damn, this could have been a hardcore band if they just like tuned up a full step and like just dialed it back a little bit in a more like a punk sound. But yeah, like bands like Vane or like Code Orange, like there are definitely kids in Boise who listen to Code Orange and then we're like, what other bands kind of sound like this? And they accidentally found hardcore, and it's dope. And they may not be like lifers, like they may not be going to LDB Fest next year or anything, but they're paying attention to it now. Like it's successful to them, and that's so cool.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes I like when I talk to people about hardcore, I always have to like check myself, because I'm a lifer, right? I've been here for forever. I don't know what, there's literally nothing at this point in my life that could take me away from hardcore. I'm so invested, and I still love it as much as I did when I first found out about it. So this is like something really rare that I'm never going to let go of. But sometimes when I talk to people and then mid conversation, I'm like realizing like, oh shit, like these people don't care about it as much as I do, or they just haven't like had the time to discover what they want. Because I try to give people like, like obviously like anybody who listens to this podcast, the people that I have on are majority from bands that I think are awesome and interesting that I think other people should be listening to. But I also never want to be that person to to kind of like force like, hey, listen to this type of music. It's like, all right, now here's like some suggestions. Do what you want with it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
whether you listen to it or not, it's always going to be there. Because like for me, I'm just a fiend. I'm always wanting more, trying to figure out like what's the newest shit, and then also at the same time trying to absorb all the current shit that's like, you know, come out before. So it's always like this weird fine line that I have to walk because I don't want to like scare people off.
Yeah, I think that even transcends hardcore. Like I have a really bad, or I really have focused like in the last couple of years of like on not being annoying about getting people to listen to bands.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know for me, if somebody punishes me about a band, I don't know why, and I hate this about me, but if I hear a lot about a band for some reason, like if somebody's like, you gotta listen to this, you gotta listen to this, I feel resistant to listen to it because I feel like maybe like it'll be like overhyped and then I won't like it, and then or whatever the case is. It's very dumb. I'm not saying anyone should do that, but it
Mm-hmm.
also has made it a point for me to kind of be like, when I talk to somebody about music, especially if it's somebody not into hardcore, um, to kind of just be like, yo, if you're like trying to check this out, yo, you should listen to this band. If not, no worries. And I think that kind of mentality allows people to just kind of like, I don't know, when I find a band on my own, I fall in love with that band 10 times more than if I'm, getting blasted about it on Twitter or if everyone showed me, like, I don't know, it feels special. So like when, there's this kid in Boise, his name is Tanner. He's the coolest kid. He's got to be like 19 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
He's like very into like metal. He came in from the metal side, and he has an Instagram. I'm gonna shout out. I think it's like summoning.redemption. And when I first met him, that was 100% just like metal, like death metal albums, and that's sick. That's totally cool. I'm into that. But he started coming to shows. He started seeing Grave Titan by proxy. He kind of started seeing like Witness Chamber, Rejection Pact, and some of the other bands around here. And he like kind of started getting into hardcore. And it's funny, like he'll post these grids of like all the albums he's listened to. And if you go on his Instagram, like a year ago versus like recently, it goes like 100% death metal bands to like the other day he was like listening to One with the Underdogs. And I'm like, yo, that's not like I accidentally found this listening to Cannibal Corpse.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a straight up hardcore record. And that's a beautiful thing to see. So that kid rocks. And like, sometimes he'll hit me up and he's like, yo, this is really cool. I'm like, yo, if you like this band, you should, like I was telling him about Master Killer the other day. That popped up on one of his little squares. And
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing that where it's like, giving those soft recommendations and just like let that person run wild. Like that's what I have a hardcore. Like Jason showed me like Trapped Under Ice and Terror. I was like, these are cool. And I remember like the turning point for me was finding Darker Half. I found it on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yo, what is this? This record is amazing. I was like, okay, I'm into hardcore now. Like that was the turning point for me. So sometimes like finding it yourself is just like the thing that'll click it over. It's like, yo, that's what makes people like you and me, where it's like, I might do some other stuff on the side. I might listen to some other music, but like hardcore is the foundation of it now.
100%. And you never want to build up like too much hype for a band, because I feel like we all consume music differently, right? Because there's bands that we love, bands that we all hate, and we all don't have the same opinions on music. And with my buddy Andy, who I hang out with all the time, shout out Andy, I'll give him recommendations. I'm like, hey, I know you like this band, check out this band, and then I'll just leave it alone, because he's very busy and just like everybody else, he consumes shit on his own time. So I'll just kind of just like plant that seed, and then like weeks later I totally forgot about that, and he's telling me like, yo, like I finally listened to so and so, like that shit's awesome. And it's cool because like I don't have to kind of like push it on him. And then as like, like I planted that one seed, and then I see and find out that he's like exploring more on his own, because he's like always listened to hardcore, but not like, super lifer, like that's all he listens to. But like more recently, I'm just like, hey, do you want to come to this fest? And I'm like, I know it's a big deal, but he's like, fuck yeah, like let's go. So he ends up flying across the country, and he's just getting like just like more involved, and it's really cool.
That's sick to see. Yeah, I love it. Especially, I've been talking to a lot of people. Like we just did this Witness Chamber tour, and like we went to Jag and stuff, and it's been really crazy to talk to people all over, at least like the West. I don't know if this happened all over the country all over, but there are so many new people getting into hardcore, and there's a lot of people that think that's, and there's an argument for that, and I get that, but I think it's beautiful. I think it's so sick. Like coming off of COVID, the first shows back in Boise were 10 to 15 times the size of what shows were prior. And this was like, Ingrown Meathead's already out. Like Ingrown's already taking over the world pre-COVID. And it like, we talk about this a lot. Like we go way back, like when all of us first started going to shows, like we had Turnstile and Take Offense at the Shredder. That was like 40 paid. And that was, a long time ago. It's like now I couldn't dream of booking those bands here. Like I couldn't pay them. We couldn't find a room for it. But like we had like an all local show. It was like one of the first shows back from COVID, and it was like 200 plus kids, and I knew 10% of the people in the room. It sounds like that's happening a lot of places, and that's so cool. So I love to hear like somebody who, even if they've already kind of listened to hardcore, it's like, oh, yo, I want to go to this fest, because that's a big undertaking. That's a lot of hardcore for somebody who's not like, like you and I are like way into it. I get tired of fests. I get fatigued. So that's sick to hear like somebody like, again, you like you said, you plant that seed and then you just kind of watch it grow. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah. And mentioning like, I think it'd be really hard to make an argument about, new kids coming around, because I feel like that's 100% necessary. Because if I think about the point that I came into hardcore, right? And imagine if no new kids joined after that. It wouldn't be as good as it is today, because so many bands have, like iconic bands have started and came since like my entry point to now. So like I get why people can be frustrated, but I don't think it's like their place to really judge, right? I feel like you kind of just got to let like these people, these new kids, whatever, just kind of let them find their own way. Let it just like, take its own course, because you don't know if these new kids are going to be the next crop of kids that are going to start the next, bands that are going to carry this into the next generation. Or yeah, granted that they might be these, poser new jacks, but just like with any poser new jacks, they fade with time. And it's just, I feel it's just like wasted energy to try to like police that. You should focus and put your energy towards like, more cool, positive shit that will help grow the community. Because, literally in time, those people get sick and tired. They find new interests or realize they don't belong, and then they just leave. And that doesn't really affect you. You just stay whatever. You just put more energy into the people who actually care and come around, and then look for the new kids with that same energy.
You hit the nail on the head by saying like it regulates itself. Hardcore regulates itself, because there are kids who are going to come into this for a minute. And, they may not be your personal favorite type of people. They may be kind of annoying at shows. They may, not wear the same clothes you do. Who gives it? Can I swear on this?
100%.
Who gives a shit? Like worry about yourself. I kind of like love it, because one, if there's somebody who's really not into it, they never get it, they're not going to stay around forever. That's fine. Nobody asked them to. If they're no worse off. This isn't for everyone. And I know this conversation comes up on Twitter every like 2 months, about, is hardcore for everyone, is hardcore for just a few. Who cares? Just do whatever you want. Because like what you said, it's like, what if I was the last person to get into hardcore when I did? In Boise, like me and my friends, like our core group, that happened kind of in Boise. Like I was the youngest person at hardcore shows for years. It wasn't until COVID where I was like, holy shit, there are kids here that like are younger than me. That probably seems like really silly, but it was actually a genuine culture shock, because that I wasn't used to that. I was always used to seeing like pretty empty rooms for really cool bands that would have gotten way bigger responses and way bigger rooms anywhere else in the country. And B, being the youngest person there, like there weren't new kids coming. And like that, so that the first like big post-COVID show back was the Grave Titan record release. It was Grave Titan, Rejection Pack, Devin's band, and then there was a death metal band called Barn, and then this cool like kind of like new metal with hardcore influence band called Teratoma. There was like over 200 kids paid in that room. It was like mind blowing, and like there are kids showing up to the show in corpse paint, and it's like that's funny. That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no like corpse paint bands in a 10-mile radius of this venue. But it's like, you know what? Like they paid the money to get in the show. They're supporting the scene. They're moshing or stage diving, or they're up front and they're buying merch. They've got any right to be here as much as any of us. And it's like, I was probably wearing, not the cool clothes when I went to my first hardcore show. But you know what? Like I wised up, and now like I play in, 3 bands. I book shows here. It's like, to what you said, like, yeah, this next crop of kids might be the one that keeps your scene from dying. They might be the next big band in hardcore, the next one to like transcend and break that barrier, start playing late night shows like Turnstile, play Coachella like Code Orange, take over the world like Bane or Ingrown. So yeah, it regulates itself. There's no reason to be a dick to new kids. It's you don't got to be best friends with everyone in your scene, especially in bigger scenes like in Boise. Everyone kind of knows everyone here. It's just too small of a scene to not. You don't got to be best friends with everyone, but like watching all these new kids, like if they get it, then they'll stay around and your scene will be better for it. If they don't, like their money was good, to pay that touring band. They're still rocking that merch, and they did it for a minute. If they're not around tomorrow, that's okay.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really curious about Boise because obviously I know like Devin, and we've been friends for a long time, so I see how much he cares about it, and I always find it interesting because there's not like a lot of bands from Boise, but I feel like the few ones that people know about are making waves, doing cool shit. So I'm just curious what it's like, from your perspective, from being from that scene. Like what is it like for you? Because obviously, you've been to other scenes, played shows in different parts of the country. I'm just curious, like for you, like what's it like coming from the Boise scene?
I think if you asked me that question a few years ago, I would have had a lot more of a negative opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said, Boise scene sucks, but I love it. Now, Boise scene doesn't suck nearly as much, but even then, I think what the difference is, like, going on this last tour, kind of seeing like the state of things. We're a lot smaller of a scene, and I like it better, to be honest, especially now that it's big enough to where it's sustainable, where I can book bands and I'm, not just paying them out of pocket every time I book a show. But it's kind of neat to, or maybe it's just because I've never had the other perspective. I've never been in like a Bay Area scene or like a New York scene where, it's like a legendary spot or like a really hot spot for hardcore. It's like in Boise, like I said, everyone knows everyone. It feels like a real community in a sense. And I kind of don't think I would trade that for the world anymore. Like, there are downsides. Like, yeah, there are not a lot of Boise bands, and all our bands are kind of incestuous. Like, everybody plays in everybody's band. And like, I'm waiting for the day that one of these kids, like, 4 of these kids start their own band and I don't have to bring gear to a show, or like, I don't have to play a show. I can like just attend. That sounds amazing. But at the same time, it's kind of sick. Like, Hunt plays guitar in Witness Chamber, plays bass in Grave Titan, plays guitar in Natural Evil, plays guitar in Rejection Pact. So, all of us play in everybody's bands, and there's all this sort of like mix around. Charlie plays in Rejection Pact, and he plays in Ingrown. It's pretty sick. It's still smaller than other scenes. Like we still get skipped over a lot for big tours, but Chad who does vocals in Witness Chamber, we've been booking shows under the Boise hardcore booking thing, and that's kind of started to change a little bit. Even just pulling smaller bands that are like supporting a major act as doing like a one-off here has really started to change. So it's sick because the downsides to our scene kind of make it what I love so much about it. The fact that it's smaller, that I like. Everybody here is like at least kind of chummy, like if not just like downright friends. Like, you go to a show and you're dapping up everyone in the room because, Boise's not a major city. Everyone who's here has been going to shows for a second or, lives down the street from you. Yeah, Boise, 5 years ago, I would have said Boise sucks. I wish I lived somewhere else, but everything's here. Now I'm like, Boise's not the biggest city you'll play in. You're not going to make the most money here, but I guarantee you'll have the biggest pop in the Northwest, and we'll take you out. We'll take you some good food. We'll take you out shooting in the desert. Like, we've made this scene something that we love, and that's I won't trade it for the world.
That's really important for people like you and everyone else that you mentioned to have those bands and to stick around and to want to put in the effort to book shows. Because for people who haven't tried or who haven't done that, it takes a lot of effort to coordinate all that, to get a venue, to get the bands to agree, and for everyone to show up on time, and for the show to run smooth. So I think it's awesome that you guys are putting in that work to make it happen. Because like 5 years ago, you said you would have said that it sucked, and you guys could have easily just packed it up and just just kind of just participated in a different way. Drove to other scenes and just kind of gave up on your own. But I think it's awesome that you guys are putting in that work, and hopefully the younger kids in your area get inspired and want to help out in some way, or maybe try to figure out their own way to kind of take on some of that load and keep shit going. Because I've always said it, like, good bands are everywhere. They don't just come from the popular scenes. You just have to go out there and find it. And I always like to use just like the Midwest, like Louisville for like an example, right? Like look at a band like Knocked Loose, one of the biggest bands in hardcore. They started from something very small, and they just became undeniable. And now people are flying out to LDB. People know about where they're from, and you see what it's done for their area with like more of the bands that are popping up these days. So I think it's really important and cool that you and your core group of friends are willing to kind of take that on and put Boise on the map. Because if you look at a band like Ingrown right now, like blowing up everywhere, they're we're just on that Drain tour, so I'm sure they opened up a lot of people's eyes to your area. And whenever I hear about that band, people are just always just so stoked. And I was fortunate enough to have seen them in LA when they played at 1720 with Drain and Pain the Truth, Vamakara. So I'm stoked for Ingrown and your area kind of just getting more looks.
Yeah, Ingrown's a big band to thank for that. I think Ingrown kicked down the door for Boise, and like it goes without saying, if you've heard that last record, like why you hear about that band as much as you do. It's because they're amazing. All the people in that band are amazing people, and that band is just a force to be reckoned with. I think they kind of do the same thing for me that like Knocked Loose says, where it's like they've become undeniable. Like they're a force to be reckoned with. They're not on that same level as Knocked Loose yet, but they're not stopping. And you're gonna hear that name, and you're not gonna stop hearing that name. And it's sick because they put on for Boise, and now because of Ingrown, people pay attention to the other bands we've been doing here for a long time, and that's sick. I love that band to death.
Yeah, and also their merch is easy to spot. If I'm walking through like a show, I'm like, oh, that's definitely an Ingrown shirt. Yeah, which is smart. It's not my favorite designs, but I'm like, I look at that and I know exactly what it is. Interesting marketing.
I think that's what I love about Ingrown so much. It may not be your favorite design. It may not even be your favorite band. Like they're not doing the same thing everyone else is doing. I think that's the Boise attitude. It's like, you may not love it. It may not be your favorite band, but you are going to recognize it. Like you're going to know when you see that, like, yeah, that new merch. I think I don't know if Charlie designed all of it or most of it. But he crushed it. I think that captures the essence of Ingrown so much. It is in your face. Like you cannot look away from Boise, and you cannot look away from Ingrown. That merch is sick. That band is sick. That band is Boise personified. I can't say enough good things about them.
No, yeah, and it makes me happy too, because sometimes bands will get overlooked just because of where they're from, and people just may not be aware. So when I see a band from Boise, a band like Ingrown, who like you said, is, kicking down those doors and just like kind of making people realize, I get stoked, because I'm like, all right, cool. I know that there's people up there working hard to try to keep it alive, and they've been doing it for years. So it's just cool to see that people are finally kind of giving them that recognition and rocking the merch. And I'm seeing it in different places, like on the West Coast. I was just in Philly for the From Within Record Showcase. I'm seeing people rock it there, so it's just awesome to see.
Yeah, when I saw that Drain, Pain the Truth, Ingrown flyer, I was like, damn it, I was so ecstatic. It felt really good. It felt warm inside to like see them on that, especially because like Drain and Ingrown have been homies for a long time. Like that friendship goes back a long way. So to see like that reconnection, both those bands doing amazing, incredible things. And of course, Pain the Truth is one of my favorite bands in hardcore right now. That their set at JAG was genuinely scary. It was so sick. But see that like Drain and Ingrown connection and watching them just like tear up the whole country. It was a culmination. There was like a bubbling over of how long and how hard that band has worked. Like the Dirty demo came out in like 2016, and that first tour, there were not many people out, checking us out at that point, but that band didn't stop for a single moment. And that's a band where you can genuinely say like never got a handout, or anything like that. They just toured and made music until you could not help but recognize them. And I think that is the sickest thing any band in hardcore can do, is you just do what you love and what you care about so much and so well that nobody can help but pay attention to your band. That's Ingram.
100%. Now, I'm just curious about Witness Chamber. Can you talk about how that band formed?
Yeah, so um, it's almost kind of a long story. So the first like hardcore band I was ever in was with Jason and Hunter of this band. It was like a long time ago. It was a really bad band, of course. And then like we didn't play in bands together for a long time. And then we kind of like got rekindled and we started doing like Natural Evil, which is like our like trashy crossover hardcore band. These guys at the time were doing a band called State of Suffering, which was a really sick band. They were basically the predecessor to Witness Chamber. They were really cool. Like put out a couple like really cool releases, and then that band kind of went to bed. A couple people like left and started doing other bands, and the four of us just found ourselves with another space for another band to create. And at the time, we've been doing Natural Evil, we've been doing Grave Titan, which were like hardcore at its roots, but not like an actual hardcore band. And I was like, man, it's time for me to just like play in a hardcore band again. And everyone else was kind of on the same page. So we're like, you know what? Like, let's do this. Let's jam. So this was during COVID. We started writing last year in January. It was like the first week of January. And we wrote for a long time. We busted out, Paradise Awaits, and we were trying to like kind of. It didn't take us long to figure out what kind of sound we wanted. Our influences kind of like bounce all over the place, but the way I was always like thinking was like the two bands that I wanted this band to sound like were Foundation and Marauder. I was like, I want to do like a Foundation style band again. I want to have like that type of like lyrical content, something that means something, but also I want people to whoop each other's ass like it's a Marauder set. And we just kind of started writing and whipped out this EP. We were like, damn, should we do like a 4-song demo? But we had all 6. We're like, fuck it, let's just drop an EP. We were kind of talking about like how to release it, and Matt from Words of Fire, who's been amazing with supporting us, decided he wanted to put it out. We dropped it, and we've just kind of been doing the thing now.
Yeah, and I feel like it's been cool. And with Matt from Words of Fire, were you guys just like, hey, we have this new band, do you want to check it out, or did he discover it on his own?
We were kind of like shopping around. Like we've been in touch with Matt, just because like he's also from Idaho, and he put out another band that he does with one of our close friends. So like that connection was already there, and we were trying to see if like somebody wanted to like put this out, but we weren't sure if anyone was going to, because like it's a band from Boise. Like even though Ingrown's taken over the world, like Boise's still not like the market, and like our first release. So we weren't sure if anyone was going to bite, and we were like, that's fine, we'll put it out ourselves. We have to. But we talked to Matt, and Matt was like, yeah, this is what I'm into. I'd love to work on it. So we showed him, and he was down enough to do it.
Okay. No, I thought it was awesome that he was willing to do that, because it just seemed like a great pair for Witness Chamber and Word to Fire. It seems like it made sense.
It definitely did. I'm so glad that we were able to do that with Matt. Matt just I think he gets that band as if he's in that, as if he's in it. Like he feels like kind of like a fifth member, where he gets like the art styles that we like, like where the sound is coming from, like the thematicness of it. It was truly a perfect fit, and he's been incredible with like helping us with tapes and helping us with like who to hit up for art, and helping us with art and merch, like designing those stickers for us. Like he's been incredible. I can't say enough good things about him. I can't thank him enough for everything he's done for us.
And I'm also curious about the name of the band. Where does that come from, or is that just something you guys just decided to, come up with?
So Jason was the one that came up with that. If I believe so. A witness chamber is like it's like the witness room for like an execution, and like that was kind of like the vibe and the theme of this record was kind of ideas of like capital punishment. There's this really cool documentary by Werner Herzog called Into the Abyss, which is like where one of the samples on the record is from, where like a lot of like Jason watched it and showed me and everybody else. We were like kind of like mesmerized by it. So that was that's where like that name came from, and that's where a lot of like the lyrical content comes from. Is a lot of like the like sentence to death and capital punishment and kind of like the horrors of it and how crazy it is. We have a lot of conversations about how like the death penalty is crazy and bad.
Okay. Well, I think the name's awesome. When I was, obviously, like whenever I listen to the band or when I think about the name, I'm like, all right, it doesn't sound too wacky or anything. And all right, like it honestly, when I think about it, it goes like with the vibe of the band. I feel like that whole thing makes sense as well. Because sometimes you'll hear a band name, listen to the music, and you're like, oh, that doesn't really fit, or it just is just not what you're expecting. But when I listen to Witness Chamber, I think about the name, I just feel like, yeah, that feels right. It makes sense.
Yeah, band names are hard, and when you can find a band name like that where it's like that fits your sound. Like when I hear Gag, Gel, Spy, I know what band I'm listening to already before I listen to that band, and that's sick. I love that. So I'm happy to hear that Witness Chamber as a name like sounds like the way we sound, because I think that names are really hard to come up with. It took us forever to pick a name, and it's funny because it's ultimately kind of arbitrary. There's bands with horrible names that play amazing music, but I think it's like an identity point, so it's an important factor. But I'm glad it fits our vibe.
And can you talk about what your experience was like going to JAG, which is something that I've been wanting to go to, but it's just just never works with my schedule, which bums me out because I've never been to the Pacific Northwest for a show. Like I've been up there before for like vacation and stuff, but I've never been up there for a show for a hardcore show. Like I went to a ska show once, but that wasn't really my choice. And but I'm just curious like what it's like for you, because what they've done, I love the lineups. I love that scene up there. I think they always got awesome stuff going on. So when obviously when Devin told me about you guys being on JAG, and I've watched the live set that was filmed by Sonny from Hate 5-6, and it looked awesome, but I'm just curious from your perspective, like what that whole experience was like going out there and playing in front of that crowd.
It was crazy. That was like it was. We had not played that many shows prior to that. Like it was like we hadn't even played our 10th show by that point. So it was also kind of like nerve wracking because we're like when Zach from Brainstem hit us up, he's like, "Yo, I'm doing Just Another Gig 3." Hunter had done Rejection Pack with Just Another Gig 2. We looked at that lineup. We're like, "This is sick." It feels like kind of homey. It's like a lot of like Northwest vibes. Maybe he'll pull like a crazy headliner or two. So we're like, yeah, we'd love to do this. And then he dropped that lineup and we're like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. Like Tsunami, Mind Force, Pain of Truth, like Queensway, like all these crazy bands. Like we thought it was going to be like almost kind of like another like Northwest showcase where like, there was going to be a lot of like Western and Northwestern, Pacific Northwestern bands. We all hang out with each other. And like, that's sick. Like doing that is like more than we could have asked for to like be a part of. But to play like what kind of felt like another Rainfest was crazy. It's sick because it being in the Pacific Northwest, it still kind of felt very homey. Like I'm sure a lot of people flew out from different areas and stuff, but seeing a lot of friends from Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, all those areas was really nice. And, it was an absolute blast. Saw so many cool bands. Saw bands I didn't think I'd see. I didn't know if I was ever going to get to see Mind Force. I'm not somebody that travels very often for like fests or anything. I never seem to, and like you said, it never seems to work with my schedule or finances. So I was like, damn, I'm going to see Mind Force. That's sick. And playing that was a dream. We were still pretty young at that point. I think Paradise Awaits came out in October, so it'd only been out for like a few months. And people really seemed to dig it. We had like a lot of fun. It was just a blast. Like I'm so thankful again to Zach and everybody involved in that for setting it up and letting us be a part of it. Cause I think it was a good opportunity for a lot of people to hear us for the first time, especially in the Northwest. And, we hadn't even announced the tour we did. Got to hang out with like Apex Predator, who we ended up doing this run with. It was a dream come true. We had so much fun with that fest.
Yeah, I was stoked for you guys. I felt like it was going to be definitely a good look because, like I mentioned, I had a bunch of friends that were there, and I reached out to as many people as I could to be like, yo, like if you have time, check this shit out because obviously fests can be exhausting, and people got their own shit that they want to do, whatever. But it's like, if you have time, you gotta check this band out because this band's fucking awesome. So I'm happy to hear that you guys had a great time playing that, because it, like I said, watching the video, it looked like it was a good time.
Yeah, it was sick. We, it was like, it's crazy to have like a Hate5six video, like for a Boise band, like that's not super common, and it's funny because like watching, you'll see like 10 or 20 or 5 or whatever of like one of these bigger hardcore bands, and that's sick. I'm not knocking that at all. That's dope. I love seeing multiple sets of bands I love, but it felt like surreal to see like Sonny at that fest and then like have him like shoot our set and like watching us on like Hate5six. That was pretty crazy. It felt really good. It felt like we've all started a lot of bands, and a lot of bands have broken up and done very little. This is the first band that all of us have taken on tour in quite a while. And like State of Suffering did one run. So yeah, it felt like we kind of found our footing for the first time in a while with a band. And again, thank you to Zach and everyone for allowing us to kind of do that. It was a good opportunity for us. We met so many cool people. It's hard for me to talk about that fest as like not a spectator, because honestly, like, yeah, we played, but it felt like I was going to a fest. I was like, damn, I'm going to see so many cool bands this weekend. Like I was, it made me feel like I was like 18 again and going to, I only ever went to like one other fest before that, and it was Rainfest 2016. And it felt like that again. I was, man, this is like overwhelming in such a good way. It was a blast.
That's awesome to hear. And you mentioned that tour with Apex Predator, and I feel like an idiot because I totally mixed up the days, because I was planning on going to the Midnight Hour date, because that was the closest one to me, and I just mixed up like which like Sunday it was on. And I remember waking up the next day and just kind of going through Instagram and realizing that I had missed the show. I was like, damn, I'm an idiot. And I was pretty bummed about that, but I was happy that you guys were able to at least make it down to Southern California and play some shows.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely be back soon. But we definitely want to hang out with our friends at Shadow Man again. Shout out that band. That is amazing.
And what was that tour like with Apex Predator? Because obviously you're playing places that you've never played before with Witness Chamber.
It was sick. Yeah, especially the dates with Apex Predator were phenomenal. Casey and Joey from that band, I've like kind of known for a long time, because like of like Gag and Scare and like all the bands they've been in, like especially the first couple of years of me getting into hardcore, like being really attached to like Northwest bands, like those dudes were in all the cool ones from Washington, and bands like Odd Man Out and things like that. So it was cool to be able to like hang out with those guys some more, like playing like our bands together. The response we got was really great. It's like the tour of the band that you're like A, friends with, and B, like genuinely love, because that Apex Predator demo was so good. It's like hilariously good. So like, yeah, being able to like hang out with them, even just for like the 3 days we did, was just phenomenal. And the places we played, like, because we did Portland, Vancouver, BC, Seattle with them. And it felt like a true vacation. It felt like we were just goofing around for 3 days, and we happened to like play some shows in the middle. It was so fun. I can't wait to hang out with all those guys again. Casey owes me a Magic deck, a couple games of Magic. We were supposed to play Magic on tour, and we didn't get it to. So, Casey, if you're listening to this, you owe me some games, man.
Okay, that's funny that you bring up Magic, because this whole time I've been wondering. Okay, Grave Titan, that has to be a Magic the Gathering reference.
Yes, sir. It 100% is. I'm very unoriginal, and so we picked the Magic card, and like half of the song names are Magic cards.
That's awesome. I don't like to say former player, because I feel like I'm a dropout. I used to play Magic the Gathering. This was back in the day. Geez, like what year was it? I don't know, maybe like 2015. I played for like a good while. I was really into the modern format, and I had a Splinter Twin deck. And once,
of course you did.
Yeah, I loved it. I don't know why. Like I tried playing. I had friends that played like Jund and like just like a bunch of other shit. And I was just always like really drawn to either just like mono red. Obviously that's always like viable, right? Mono red's fun, but I was like, I want to get like something that can actually stand up against like these like top tier decks, and be able to like play some tournaments, because like we're going to tournaments and shit and trying to like take it like way more serious. And I was like, all right, let me land on Splinter Twin because that was just something that I thought was really fun. And as soon as that card got banned, and I don't even know if it's still banned to this day because I haven't
I,
yeah, because I haven't kept up. But once that card got banned and my deck was just crippled, I was just thinking like, shit, like, do I try to kind of piece out like what I have into something else? Because I had, I obviously had like a lot of money cards, or do I just like pack it up and just sell everything? And I just decided I was like, you know what? I've done so much like study and like like I know like I knew every move to make with like basically every scenario versus any deck because I just love that so much and I wanted to take it serious. And I was like, I don't think I could want to do that with anything else, and I just sold all my cards and just never looked back.
that's totally understandable. Like I go through phases, and I think that's like maybe not like everybody does this, but like all of us, like we go through phases.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first got into Magic, I was like 15 or 16. I had my first job over the summer. I was making like $8 an hour working full time. And I lived walking distance. Like the card shop was like two houses behind my house. Like it was dangerously close. And I spent pretty much every dollar I made that summer on like it was like Theros block standard, playing Friday Night Magic, getting my actual ass kicked every week and adoring it. And at the end of the summer, my dad was so pissed because I was working full time. I had like hardly any expenses, and I just blew everything on Magic. It was
Mm-hmm.
so dumb. And then after a while, I kind of like got bored, stopped playing, sold all my cards, and then after a while, I was like, damn, I kind of want to get to Magic again. And I think the key has been to not play. The key is to not play standard, but also just playing like basically kitchen table Magic, where we just our group of friends will play with each other. If somebody like on tour or like somebody I know like wants to play, definitely play. But it's also been the point where now I don't really build like competitive decks. I just build decks that are really funny. So my new favorite thing is I don't build decks that like I build decks that 9 times out of 10 I'm probably gonna lose, but the 1 time out of 10 I'm gonna win. You're gonna go, dude, I don't like this deck. Can you play something else?
Mm-hmm.
That's the words I'm looking to hear. So it's weird that Magic and Hardcore have combined so much for me, but I definitely get like being like, oh, this card just got banned, and I play, Friday Night Magic or play in tournaments. Cool. Well, it feels like I just wasted a bunch of money, so I think I'm just gonna sell my cards and like not care about this anymore. I would probably feel the same way if it wasn't for the fact that I played so casually.
Yeah, and luckily, okay, here, I gotta put this out there. So luckily, all of my skills that I learned from Magic, right? Because I obviously like when I started, I sucked ass. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but
Yeah.
just finding the community. Luckily, there was like a cool shop that I would go to, and the people were pretty chill and like willing to help. And like I kind of found my group where we would actually like play outside of like Friday Night Magic and stuff. Hold on, I gotta clear my throat.
You're good.
And so like obviously like so many years, and it's just like, oh cool, like I'm actually decent at this card game, and it can get pretty complicated, right? You gotta
Yes.
make sure everything is going smoothly. You gotta check all your stuff, the phases or whatever. But more recently, I stumbled across this Japanese trading card game. I played on Steam and on my phone. Like that's how like obsessed I'm with it. It's called Shadowverse, and it's like kind of like Hearthstone type.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just like one of those card games, and it's pretty fun. It's like a lot of strategy involved, and I'm like, all right, cool. Like this kind of fills that itch that I have to want to play card games, because I still like think about, man, like could I go out and because like now like I get like I could rebuy and build like a cool modern deck, but at the same time like I don't know if I want to go out on like a Friday night or if I want to go to these tournaments, because it's just like I'm way different stuff going on now versus back then. So
Yeah.
so I'm just happy that I could fill that like that want to play like a competitive card game with Shadowverse, which I was like sunk in like over like 400 hours then, which is insane.
That's sick. Yeah, I've never heard of that. I'll have to check it out. I've touched Hearthstone a couple times, and
Mhm.
for me, I was like, well, I'm like really into Magic again, so I feel like this doesn't like I don't need to play this that much. But I feel like once I hit my like downslide on Magic again, I'll probably pick up Hearthstone again. But yo, if you're ever trying to get back into Magic, let's play. Have you ever heard of Popper?
Never. What is that?
So Popper is a format that is like built for people who have had the experiences you and I have, where like you build like a really expensive deck and then like something happens, you're like, cool, why did I waste all this money? So it's kind of like modern, where it's like you can range from like pretty much anywhere in Magic, but you can only play common cards, so it's super super cheap. But it also makes you like think about your deck more. So like when I got bored of all the decks I had, and I was like, hell, I really want another deck, but like I'm not trying to spend like a lot of money on this. I hit up Caden from Grave Titan, and I was like, yo, we should build Popper decks and just like see what we can do. And it's funny, like you find like really obscure combos, and it's like it feels like Magic made for people who want to have fun versus who want to like spend a lot of money and do a lot of math, which nothing wrong with that. But when you're trying to just like hang out with your friends on a Friday night, sometimes you don't want to bust out like 30 dice and a calculator to like figure out what this fractal is going to be. So yeah, like I built like a red black deck where the whole thing is like discarding like common Eldrazi's, and then there's this like old ass like 2-drop, like 1 color is 1 black, which is so like each player pulls a card from their graveyard onto the battlefield. So like the whole thing is like you discard an Eldrazi, you pay 2 and you play an Eldrazi. You can't hit it most games, but when you do, it's just like really funny. And it just, I don't know, it feels like making Magic more to have fun rather than to win. So if you're trying to get back into Magic, look at Popper.
Okay, no, yeah, I'll definitely take that into consideration, because I always thought it was awesome. And then I almost like, because more recently there was like a collab that I came across my timeline, like Street Fighter and Magic the Gathering, like did some sort of collab, and I'm like, oh, those are like two things that I love. But I was like, I don't know. I was like, I just gotta stay away. But yeah, I gotta look into it, because it's always been fun. Just being out Friday night with people that I normally wouldn't hang out with, but still managing to have like a really good time.
Yeah, and that is one thing I miss about like playing Standard, is like it forced me to socialize a little bit, because like I'm pretty reclusive. I'm kind of one of those people where like in hardcore I'm not that way, but like to the like outside world I'm like kind of all friended up. Like I'm not gonna be mean to anybody, but I don't know. I just like, we don't have that much in common. But going to like Magic games, like even though that community is definitely quirky to say the least, it was kind of fun to like go to Friday Night Magic and like talk with like people. And it's funny, like I met people at that card shop that like were kind of like hardcore adjacent. Like there was one dude that worked there for a while that we like talked about music in the middle of the game. He's like, oh yeah, I have a giant Hatebreed tattoo on my chest. I was like, okay, that's insane. Did not expect that at this like Magic the Gathering tournament. So yeah, that I do kind of miss like the community aspect of it, but at the same time, I kind of get that with like, I can literally just go across the hall, knock on Jason's door, and be like, "Hey, you want to play Magic?" We'll just go sit downstairs and listen to music and play Magic. It's pretty sick.
Okay, and that crazy Hatebreed guy, did he ever like go to like local shows, or did you ever see him outside of the shop?
I think he was part of the old guard. I think he used to go to shows, and just how things go sometimes. No disrespect at all. Everybody walks different paths in life, but I haven't seen him in a show in a long time. I don't even know what he's up to. He definitely doesn't work in that card shop anymore. But yeah, I think he used to play in like a band in Boise. So like, that it was just kind of weird. Like imagine just meeting like somebody who like has like cool taste in music, and it's kind of like even just like hardcore wear at like a Magic the Gathering tournament is just a sentence I never thought I'd say.
No, it's strange too. Like I was at a show the other night to go support my friends in this local band called Major Pain, and they were playing with not hardcore bands, but there was like a local band called Ridgeway that is pretty popular. And yeah, so they're like, it was like their like tour kickoff show, because they're about to they're definitely at this point like already on the road and on tour. And I remember I walked in, and like none of my friends cared or even wanted to go, so I was like, all right, whatever, like I want to support Major Pain because I like those guys, like the band. And I remember I walked in, and there was like a bunch of kids in there, like wearing hardcore merch, whatever, and I was like, I've never seen any of these kids before, and I'm sure they're probably looking at me. I was like, the same thing, like, who's this weirdo? And it's just really interesting. It's like, okay, there's literally hardcore kids everywhere, but it's cool. I'm just happy that those kids like rolled out and were supporting Major Pain and the whole show. But I just didn't. I always just blows my mind, because out here there's so many people, right? That there's like a million, well, not a million, there's more than a million people in California, but in like the hardcore scene, it's just like it's like never ending. I feel like obviously I recognize all the regulars, my friends, whatever, but there's always just like this whole crop of people where I'm like, are they local or are they from out of town? I have no idea. It's always crazy to see that kind of stuff. So I can imagine, like, you going to like a Magic the Gathering, a card shop and seeing or hearing about somebody with a Hatebreed tattoo that could be just as surprising.
Especially in Boise, because like I agree with everything you said up until you said like, oh, are they from out of town? And I'm like, yeah, why would you come to Boise unless your grandma lives here? We're not a destination spot, so yeah, it was pretty bizarre, but it's also kind of sick. Also, that Ridgeway band is cool. Devin was telling me about them. Is Major Payne spelled Pain or Payne?
Pain, just the normal way.
Okay. For a second, I thought it was like a nod to that movie. I was like, that's sick, but that's still a cool name.
Yeah, it honestly could be. I don't know. I've never asked. I'll have to talk to my buddy and see what the vibes are like.
So, yeah. But yeah, it's weird to like accidentally come across somebody who's like hardcore adjacent or hardcore aware, but it's also kind of fun. Like, even though it's kind of like, man, like, why don't you go to shows? Again, everybody like walks their own different paths in life. You can't be at every show. Sometimes things happen, but yeah, it's weird. We talk about this a lot with like all the emo rap, like the like Suicide Boys and Ghostmane, how like one of the dudes in Suicide Boys was in a hardcore band, and like Ghostmane was in like an actual like kind of good hardcore band, and like a lot of those kids somehow like kind of accidentally like step into hardcore for a second. So like there's like kind of aware of that. It's fun to see like other subcultures or like other worlds, like somehow like there's that little section in the Venn diagram where somehow these things meet, and you're like, I don't know how this happened, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's definitely awesome to be able to see hardcore get love from other people that you just like would not expect. You're like, oh shit, that's fucking cool. Just as long as they're not doing it like in a weird corny way. As long as like it's like real like love, and they're trying to like actually show it respect.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with like a lot of these new kids coming in where they may not like get it yet, like it may not be their world right now, but I think at least in my experience, most of those kids like they have a genuine like appreciation for it, even if it's pretty like surface level or elementary. It's always like cool to see, because everybody's got to come from somewhere. Like there are very few people that are like afforded the privilege of like being born into hardcore. Like if your dad toured with Black Flag, that's cool. Like you got lucky that you got born into that, but like my parents didn't. The people around me didn't listen to hardcore, so like you all got to start somewhere. It's cool to see that somewhere is in more places than I realized and closer than I realized. It's it's one thing to accidentally stumble into a hardcore kid and they show you that, like I did with Jason. It's another thing to where like your favorite rapper was in like a hardcore band and like uses like hardcore samples, or like is like screaming in their music, or Little Ugly Mane's playing with Gatecreeper, or Harm's Way is on tour with Ghostmane. Like it's fun to see that like accessibility get like smaller and smaller, because you're going to get a lot more people crossing over who may not be around for the whole thing, may not like get into it for the right reasons, and may get out quicker than than you or I might, but they're still around for a second. And if 100 people come to a show and only one of them comes to the show tomorrow, that's success.
Is it weird when people get into hardcore in their like late 20s?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody I've met that got into hardcore kind of late. I think all the kids that I know got into hardcore young, kind of like me, maybe older than me, but I don't know. Whenever you get into it, it's whenever you get into it. That's sick. Who cares? You can be 40. You can go bust your hip in the pit for all I care. If you're down, then you're down.
If I'm gonna be honest, I had this friend, and her, or the father of her child was like in his like mid to late 20s, just getting into hardcore, and she was trying to get me to like help him out and be like, yeah, you should hang out with him. I'm like, no, no, I don't want to hang out with him. That's just kind of weird. Like, where has he been? He's like literally like 27, 28. I'm like, how's he just getting into hardcore? Like, what kind of music was he listening to before? It was just really strange to me. And like, I was like, what? I was like, whatever. I was like, I'm gonna let him. He just got into it. He can figure it out. So I wasn't like trying to like gatekeep or whatever. I was just like, I'm just gonna kind of just watch from the sideline. Hopefully he sticks around. And sure enough, I don't even know if he ever went to a show. He's not around anymore. So I just thought it was just really weird. I'm like, he just got into this. And like, you know, whatever. Like, yeah, like we all get into it at our own point. Like, I was fortunate enough to get into it when I was like a freshman in high school as well. My sister showed me, you know, some hardcore music, and I was off to the races. But I just think it's really strange because I'm like 20, like, you know, 27, 28, whatever. Like, it wasn't that long ago, so I don't know. I just find it kind of curious. Wish I could have sat down with him. And now I'm like, I want to hear his story.
Yeah. That's what I was like saying. I was like, damn, I don't know if I know anyone that got into it that late. So like, I don't know if I have any experience there. But I get what you're saying, where it's like, if you're just now getting into it, like you're that old, like I don't know what we're gonna talk about. I don't know if we got to be best friends. Like I'm definitely, you know, if somebody was like, hey, you know, if somebody had given me that same story, like, hey, my husband who's 28 just got into hardcore, I'd definitely be like, okay, well, I guess that's kind of strange. And they're like, will you hang out with them? Like, I mean, if they're cool, yeah, like I'm down to give you like band recommendations. If I see you at shows, I'm gonna be hyped. But yeah, I get the same thing where it's like, damn, that's it's weird to like try and put myself in a mind space because like I'm 23. Like I'm not even old enough to be at that point where it's like it'd be weird for me to get into hardcore. I guess even if I was 23 and get into hardcore, that'd be kind of late. But I've only ever met people that got into hardcore when they were like way younger. So yeah, that's kind of a different world. I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah. Now I'm curious because yeah, like what were they? Like what the hell were you listening to? What were you doing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I want to know what that person's crossover was too. Like I'd be curious if like how crazy would it be if that dude was like, yeah, I was watching Late Night the other night because I'm, you know, a normie at 28 and I saw Turnstile and now I am into that. It's like, damn, that could be a possibility for like a lot of new people now. There's a lot of weird like hardcore bands breaking into the mainstream. That'd be kind of cool to see.
I was at FYA and I definitely saw like a lot of that, you know, new crop of people because of Turnstile. Like Turnstile headlined, and I saw a lot of people in the room that didn't look like they were there earlier in the day, which is fine. And I was like, these like clearly people are just, I obviously stick out like a sore thumb, and they were just there for Turnstile. I was like, okay, it's definitely happening. We just gotta just kind of like realize it in real time, which is fine because I still like Turnstile. I saw them when they played, when shows started coming back. They did like a couple days in California with Never Ending Game, and that was really a fun time. FYA, they killed it. They're a special band. It was like for a band to headline the last day of a fest and not have the room clear out completely. I was like, okay, like yeah, they have it. They're special. So
yeah, a few of us went and saw them on that like Suicide Boys tour they did, and that was a trip. Like we got seats. Like we didn't want to go down the pit because we were like, yeah, well, why are we sitting for this? But like I'm really actually glad we did because we kind of got like a bird's eye view of watching this like arena of like rap fans watch Turnstile, and it felt like I was like in a parallel universe for a minute. Like it felt like I was exploring like a what if scenario that only you could like dream of. Where and people seem to like it a lot. Like I walking out of that show and like even around town now, occasionally I'll see somebody with like that really sick green Turnstile glow on hoodie they were selling at that show. And I'm like, damn, that kid went to that show. Wild. They're walking into like an Urban Outfitters right now with like a 3X Turnstile hoodie and they weigh 90 pounds. That's crazy. That's cool. And like they got a good reaction. It was a fucking trip to see. But yeah, that band Special is the word for sure. Like Glow On's amazing. It's weird. I kind of want to like punish some of the kids that like found them through Glow On or through like that Suicide Boys tour, through like the late night shows, and see like how far back in that discography did you go? What other bands did you start listening to because of this, if any? And see like statistically what percentage of like that crossover is and how far it's making. Because like I don't think people are hearing Turnstile and like going to see that never ending game show. I don't think people are hearing Turnstile and flying to Jag or LDB, or at least like not a lot of them. But it'd be curious to see if like, there's like 10, 20, 30 kids, even if there's just like one or two from Boise that only went to, the In Time Terrena show the other night, or going to Denial of Life tomorrow night because they saw Turnstile and like they kind of fell hardcore. I think that would make me really excited.
Yeah, I would be surprised to kind of figure out who is here because of what Turnstile is doing. And it definitely is really hard to gauge because, I went and saw them when they played Coachella, and that was a big deal for me because I was just really curious to see what it was going to be like. And just watching the crowd, and they killed it. Like I've never seen a bad Turnstile set from their first show in California to even to now, many years later. I've never seen a bad Turnstile set from them or the crowd. And just being at Coachella and seeing so many kids go off, I'm like, oh wow, that's like crazy, because I didn't know. I'm like, how many of those people out there are actually hardcore kids, or how many people just are in tune with like, because Coachella is like a whole like lifestyle, whatever. So people will see the flyer and kind of just go listen to bands that they're not familiar with and maybe just fall in love with new music. And I'm kind of curious to like, how many of those people were like, out there that day watching Turnstile, because there were way more people. And this is no diss, because like they're, like a band that I like and respect, but there were way more people there going crazy than I had, could have guessed.
Really? That's sick to hear. Yeah, that's always been like kind of like puzzling, is like, when these bands do these crazy things, when they're on tour with bigger bands, like Code Orange, I'm not really surprised anymore, just because like they've been doing it for a second. Like they just did that tour with Korn, and I'm like, I bet that was dope for them. But like when they played Mayhem Festival, I was like, am I gonna be the only person here that gives a shit? And like the answer was like, not really. No, people were down with it. And I guarantee you on that tour, there was a lot of people that never heard Code Orange before. That was like right when they really started like swinging for the fences, like doing all the big stuff. But like Turnstile at Coachella, I'm like, man, dude, does that feel weird, or does that pop? Especially with Glow On, where it's like more accessible. Like, if they're playing like first couple of records, I bet that, get some sideways glances. And like at that Suicide Boys show, like people seem to really like it. I think people think it's like kind of quirky, and maybe a lot of people don't go and listen to that band afterwards. But again, it's hard to measure. But I'm curious to see how many people stuck with that, or how many people even just like went back to Time and Space, or if anyone went back to like Pressure to Succeed, or if they like went on Recommend Artists and like found somebody even harder. That's like it feels like a brain teaser. It feels like it's not real, but I'm always curious about it. That's like that, like they did pretty all right at Coachella. It's like the people were vibing. Yeah,
and I'm sure they're set because they're on it again this year. So I'm sure their set's going to be even better this year, obviously, because they're a way bigger band, but they're definitely going to have a lot of like returning people to watch their set. And I'm curious where they're going to be placed, because when I saw them, they played in this tent, which was just seemed like just like a normal venue on just like inside Coachella, which was fine. But I could see them playing like one of the bigger stages this year.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how that goes. I hope that band keeps doing all that cool stuff and more people like them. That's another band that just toured and grinded and worked hard and made music, however they wanted, and they're getting really cool opportunities for it. And that's sick to hear. Anyone who wants to hate on Turnstile can suck it, because that shit rocks.
Yeah, I just kind of ignore that, because I'm like, how can you hate on a band that, like you said, played what they wanted to when it wasn't the cool thing to do, right? They just kind of just did whatever they wanted and found success with that, and they're arguably doing and hopefully drawing more people to hardcore, which isn't a bad thing. Like we might see some weirdos at shows, but that weirdo, like I said earlier, could be starting the next cool big hardcore band that helps grow a scene. So you can't really predict the future, right? So it's just like, Just let them be. Support them. Don't turn them away, because you could be killing your own scene unintentionally.
100%. Yeah. When I went to my first show, I'm sure everyone in that room looked at me like, who the fuck is this kid? Where does he think he's supposed to be? And now, I've been here ever since. So I hope those kids with the corpse paint that came to that Grave Titan show, I hope they stick around forever. I hope they get it. I hope they have a lot of fun. And I hope they start bands, because they could, when I'm old and gray, they might be doing exactly what I'm doing, way better than me.
And the corpse paint, was that maybe they just had just left like a Halloween party, or was that like?
It was like in July, so I think they just like they're like metal, crazy album covers. Let's do the corpse paint thing. I don't even know if they maybe they're just like really into black metal, and like they actually were just like, no, I'm really into this. Like that's what I'm doing. Or maybe they were just like, this is the first Google image I found when I looked up heavy metal, and I'm going to do this because that's funny. Either way, that's sick. Like, you came to the show, so you're doing better than any jaded old hardcore guy that doesn't come around anymore. So you rock.
That reminds me of when I went to go see Marilyn Manson a couple years ago, and unfortunately it was like around Halloween. So when I showed up, right, I was wearing normal clothes. I didn't know like there was like any type of dress code, but I remember parking my car and stepping out, and I was with a buddy, and he'd never seen Marilyn Manson either, so he was in the same boat as me. We didn't really know what was normal, and like we see this girl, she has a black eye, and I'm like, okay, that's either makeup or she really has a black eye. So I'm like, all right, maybe that's cool. She's coming like dressed up, and then see some guy, he's like, looks like he just escaped prison, has like broken handcuffs, he's in an orange jumpsuit. And then we're seeing people with like corpse paint, and I'm just like, okay, I don't want to be rude or anything, but I'm just like, is this normal, or is this because Halloween's right around the corner? I want to know. And I've never seen Marilyn Manson since then. I don't even know if he's toured through here since then, but so I never could find that answer, but it was just this really interesting experience, and it was one of the few times where I went to the Observatory. That's where he played, and he's like an artist that made that venue feel bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, that's sick. Yeah, that it's funny to like go to an artist where it's like, this artist is like almost Halloween themed, so I don't know how much of this is just like we're getting the costumes out a week early, or somebody went, I'm going to a Marilyn Manson show, so I'm going to hit, Halloween City real quick and get dressed up for the Marilyn Manson show. That's really funny to think about. Part of me kind of hopes it was like somebody was just like, yo, we're going to a Marilyn Manson show. I'm going to go to like a Halloween store and get a costume, because that's sick. That's hilarious to me, and I love that. Yeah,
no, it just made it seem cool, because it wasn't advertised as like a Halloween show. It was just like, Marilyn Manson's playing the Observatory, like roll out. So I can't remember if somebody else played or not. Maybe it was just him. It was a really long set, but interesting night.
Yeah, it almost kind of makes you wonder, like, yo, if that show was in February, how much of that same stuff would you have seen?
I'd like to think just the same.
I hope so too. That's so sick.
Yeah, because I can imagine it being fun, like an event. Like, okay, more recently, I went and saw this K-pop group Twice, and I got asked like, "Oh, are you gonna dress up?" And I'm like, "I don't think so. Am I supposed to dress up?" Like, it's just like going to a show, right? And I remember I went. What was I wearing? I was wearing like a Tsunami t-shirt and like Dickies and just like Vans, and I remember I was front row, right? This is my brag, right? I spent a lot of money. I was front row.
Hell yeah.
It was definitely worth it. But I felt I felt like I missed an opportunity, because I was like, going into the arena, and I saw so many cool people, guys and girls dressed up based off like certain eras of the band, like from their music videos. And I was like, oh, that's so fucking cool. And I was like, I'm an idiot. I should have done something cool. Especially, I'm probably just looking like some weirdo, right? Front row, normal clothes, and everybody's dressed up like super nice. I'm like, all right, okay, next time I go, I'm gonna do something fucking cool. And then sure enough, here we are. They announced they're doing like this encore thing. It's like a one night only in LA. and I'm trying to get front row again. Just depending on if I can get it for retail, whatever. I'll be there somewhere close. But also, this time I'm gonna dress up as like not my normal clothes, so I'm gonna wear something cool. I'm either gonna get like this yellow plaid suit and like look like super fresh that way, or I'm thinking about like this pink cowboy hat, which isn't like something I would normally wear, but going to see Twice, it totally fits like these eras that I'm like in love with. So I want to make it more fun than it was last, because the last time I went by myself, I was in the front row, had the time of my life, literally changed my life. But this time I want to be like, all right, cool. I want to have a little more fun with it now that I'm more experienced now versus back then.
Dude, that's sick. I wish there were more bands like that, or like more artists that I like that. Maybe I need to expand my scope, where if I went and saw that artist, it would be like customary to dress up crazy. Like, I can't think of an artist that I would go see. Oh, okay. So this is not a flex. This is actually kind of like embarrassing and cringy, but it's funny.
Okay.
Like, that video of like all the cybergoth people dancing under that bridge that got really popular for a bit.
I know it very well.
For some reason, I got way into that, and like I like listen to like Agrotech and like that industrial like cybergoth shit now. And I went to one show, and like I dragged Jason to go with me. It was at like the venue that a lot of hardcore shows are at, and it was like empty. It was so beat. But like we went to like an Agrotech show, and like it was kind of cool. Like Boise's a really small city to begin with, so like I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of people for like a scene that's somehow even like smaller and more niche than fucking hardcore. Like there were like a couple people there with like the cyber locks and stuff. I'm like, man, part of me wishes like this was popular, and like just to be really funny, like get like black Jinko jeans, a bunch of chains, like a gas mask, and just go really hard. Because like in a hardcore, everyone's got like the fit you were explaining. Like nothing wrong with that. That's how I dress most days. But like, man, wouldn't it be funny or like just kind of like freeing to just dress up for like a completely different world, a different genre. So yeah, pink cowboy hat. I want pics. You should do that for sure.
Yeah, I got to figure it out. The show's not till the middle of May 14th, so got to figure it out.
Time.
Yeah, plenty of time. But that's crazy. That cyber goth stuff. I know there's a club out here. Not in Orange County, but in LA. I know there's like some sort of like cyber goth club that my friends try to drag me to, which isn't my scene, but I'm like, wow, maybe if you like that music, you would fit right in.
Yeah, I'm real curious. That it's one of those things where it's kind of like magic, or a lot of things where I really enjoy the content, but I don't necessarily identify with that subculture, and I don't know how willing I am to get into that. And I have a feeling I would probably just like go to one, stick out like a sore thumb, and then be like, yeah, that was an experience. And then maybe I'll go back. Maybe I drop hardcore and get into cybergoth. But odds are that's probably not going to happen.
I just picture myself like walking through like the set of like Blade. I don't know if you've ever seen Blade, like the.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. It's funny. I also wonder if I maybe have like an incorrect image in thinking that like all cybergoth shows in like popular areas just look like that opening scene. And like I hope so, but maybe people who like would hear me say that be like, dude, that's not how this works. Like, you're dumb.
Well, I would like to be enlightened. Somebody to let us know, because I would be really curious. Because for me to be out at that hour is really rare. Because I'm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I get very little sleep to begin with. So if I'm not, that's not like my main thing. So to get me to go out and do something like that would be. It had to be something special.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, I'll stay out late for a hardcore show and I'll still complain about it, but going to like a goth club or like a cyber goth show, that might take an act of God for me to be out that late.
Okay. Now going back to Witness Chamber, you mentioned Paradise Awaits came out back in October, and I know it still hasn't been that long. But do you guys have plans to write any new music, or are you trying to tour more on Paradise Awaits?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. So we were playing 2 new songs on this last tour. We're definitely trying to write more. I broke my wrist on tour, so we're kind of like sitting for a little bit. But like we definitely want to like write some more music. We're trying to do like at least one more tour this year, hopefully. Um, we're not quite sure like what all it looks like, but we definitely have some new music in the pipe, and we want to put it out sooner rather than later.
And how'd you break your wrists?
Because I'm an idiot. I was moshing Apex Predator in Vancouver and accidentally clicked somebody and broke my wrist. It fucking sucks.
That's crazy. All right, mosh pit injury. That shit happens. But okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that you guys have new stuff and things are gonna come at some point. But I'm also just happy that you guys are out there getting in front of people because I feel like that's probably like the best way to get new people interested is just by showing up and playing because a lot of times people haven't clicked that link to check out your music, but they'll roll out to the show because there's a band there that they like. And if you're there, it's like, okay, cool, this is that band that I've been meaning to check out. And then word of mouth after that, which helps out a lot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I am. Like I feel stupid sometimes when I like see a band and haven't listened to them, and then I find out I really really like them, and I'm like, shit, I wish I would have found this band like 6 weeks ago and like gotten really familiar with their music so I could have like appreciated it even more. But I think also it's really easy to become like inundated and like just kind of like overburdened with how much new music comes out, and if you're tapped into hardcore, a lot of that it can be overwhelming to like try and keep up. Like every year at the beginning of the year or like at the end of the year, I get like bummed because I see everyone making their like top 10 hardcore lists. I'm like, dude, I did not keep up with enough to make these lists. So then I'll go to like the No Echo, like 2021 or 2022 new releases, and I'll try really hard to keep up with it. And that playlist made me realize how much new music comes out all the time. So it's like very hard to keep up. So yeah, I think for me, the best way for a band to catch my attention is me see them like live, like have that energy in front of you. So that's definitely like what we kind of want to do. Like we've got new music, so we're itching to like put it out and have it out there. But also, tour was so much fun. Like as soon as we got home, I was ready to go back out again. So I think we'll be doing, like I said, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. We'll hopefully have some new music out soon, but we definitely want to keep traveling, like see the rest of the country and play with some more cool bands and just keep rocking.
And as far as your other bands, you guys have stuff going on with that, or is that just kind of chilling right now?
Let's see. We don't have anything too crazy playing with Grave Titan right now. I mean, it's still active, but it's like I said, all these bands are pretty incestuous, so everybody's we got to be careful not to spread our butter too thin. Mm-hmm. Natural Evil, we just put out a release not that long ago. We did like a one song and a cover, and we've got some new music that we're not sure when it's coming out, but we've got another record ready to drop. So we can keep an eye out for that. It's like Hunter writes all the riffs for that, and Hunter's my favorite guitarist in the world. He writes the craziest shit, and he's such a like thrash head. So I'm really excited for that to come out. But yeah, well, nobody's stopping anything anytime soon. It's just a matter of like who's up next, who's got the heat right now. Who we all itching, and I guarantee you in 6 weeks, 2 months, well, some of us will have another band that we'll be plugging. It's for us, it's just like just make as much as we can and as much as we want, and that'll never stop.
Okay, and before we part ways, if there's anyone out there listening who is curious, how would you sell them on Boise hardcore today?
I mean, there's something for everyone here. If you're new to the scene, if you're new to hardcore, this is great because it's small and everyone's friends, and we want you at shows. We want new people at shows. We want you to come and check this out. If you're a vet, if you've been around for a minute, like you won't believe like the cool bands like sitting like lying in wait here. Bands like Rejection Pact, who are on the cusp of rocking your world as soon as you hear them. And if you're a band that's trying to tour, if you're coming to the West and you're skipping Boise, not just because I live here, you're making a mistake. There's no reason for you to drive from Salt Lake to Portland, drive all that time, waste all that gas, cut your drive time in half, stop in Boise. Let's play a show. You'll meet some really cool people. You get to play with some cool bands here. Maybe they're one of mine. Maybe there's somebody else's. There are a lot of people here that play cooler music than me. We'll take you out to the desert. We'll go shooting guns. We'll eat some good food. Boise is definitely not. It's gotten better. It's still not the best city you're going to play on tour, but it won't be one you'll forget. We take care of bands around here. We like that hospitality. We know we're not going to pay you the most. You may not sell the most merch that night, but I guarantee you're going to go, yo, Boise was crazy. That's what it's all about here.
All right, Alex, this has been awesome. I, enjoy Witness Chamber. Happy to hear about Boise hardcore. This has definitely been a fun one for me. So I definitely appreciate your time today.
Hell yeah, man. I was really excited when you hit me up to do this. I'm a big fan of the podcast. So thank you for having me, man. I appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, no problem. And before we sign up, is there anything else you would like to say?
Man, shout out Boise Hardcore. Shout out Rejection Pact. All my friends who helped me, book shows, play in bands. Shout out all my friends in the Northwest. Shout out Vancouver, BC. Shout out hardcore in general. That shit's fun. Shout out the Cranberries. That's the best band in the world. And shout out the Jamie Orkay podcast.
All right. We appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Goodbye.